Hello everybody, and we're at the last video right now, basically just going to be talking about this for a bit. And the last thing that we had to do was we were going to talk about the process for skinning the body, the arms, the head, and also, don't forget, we also have to skin the eyebrows as well. So for this, we're basically just going to take the rest of the video for this. Now I'm going to go over the basics on most of this stuff. When we get to the fingers, I'll probably call it a day at that point because once you understand how one finger works, you should be able to get the rest of them. It's just going to end up taking a lot of time. But before we get into the skinning, just the last thing I want to talk about is the extra heads. Again, we have a lot of extra blend shapes over here. My recommendation would be to hide them in their own layer. This way, if we want to add more blend shapes later, you've already seen how we could do that, so that's not going to be too much of a problem. However, we want to make sure that we save this information just in case. So I'm clicking and dragging the whole shebang, making myself a new layer, and I will call this BS for blend shape, of course, layer. So all the blend shapes I have are here, and boom, I can turn them off, and I can bring them back should it be necessary. Okay. So pretty much all these other areas were already skinned. So if I go to, again, skin, go to paint skin weights, you'll see that all the information can be found here and so on. It looks like everything that I need is here. Your elements might be a little bit different in case you end up having a full shirt or maybe not the whole thing. And that's fine. That's one of the reasons why I had so many references in case they were necessary. But at the very least, if you understand what we did last time, this should hopefully help. So basically taking a look at what we have over here. Let's see. Yeah, so this is the next spot and such. All right, so I think I can get into this pretty easily. But again, all these other areas were already skinned. So the big thing I need to do now is I need to skin the head. And I'll actually show the whole skinning process of that as well. Okay, so before I go any further, I do have to bring up my little human IK thing again. Again, you can get there by getting the little stick figure dude that we have over here. And actually before that, I'm going to actually turn off the hair for my character because it's kind of getting in the way. So, but everything else can pretty much stick around. Okay, so getting into regular mode. And again, I'm going to my control rig, and I'm going to turn this off so that I can skin properly. Now, for the eyes, the eyebrows is better said, I would actually select the eyebrows like so, then the skull. Of course, I'm just going to double check to make sure I have the right one. Yep, character head, that's the one that we want in this case. And yeah, so just again, make sure you have the right one. Yep, there, there. Okay, actually it's supposed to be here and there. Okay. Well, either way should work just fine. So, bones, then the mesh itself, and you'd go to skin, bind skin. In this case, again, we don't really need to get fancy with it. We just need just one joint. So I'm just going to go with closest distance and bind skin. So I'm just going to test it to make sure it works properly. Yep, it does. No problems there. Okay, now the tough one. We basically need to skin the head. Now, most likely, everyone here is going to be skinning just the neck to the head itself. So you probably don't have to worry quite as much as what I'm going to be doing here. That being said, still want to at least show how you could approach this. So once again, you're going to be selecting the actual skull itself, or head joint. You definitely do not want to get anything beyond this. Then I'm going to select the neck, and then I'm going to select, well, let's see here. I'm debating whether or not I actually need the clavicle joints, because the actual area does go out just a little bit, so yeah, basically it is seen, but at the same time, not that much. So yeah, I think it probably wouldn't be a bad idea. So I'm going to select this clavicle, then I'm going to select this clavicle, and then I'm going to select here. So the tough part is basically just kind of debating whether or not I want to actually have this or not. So maybe just around here. Yeah. But anyways, once you've decided, you'd select the actual main head itself, and then go to skin, bind skin. And again, I'm going with the selected joints because that's important. I'm going with geodesic voxel because I'm doing more than one joint. Keeping all the other settings the same, but I'll keep this up for a moment so that you can get the settings. Again, we're going with a max influence of 2, at least for now. And everything else looks okay. The default settings should work well. So once you go to bind skin, and of course make sure you select the skin itself, it'll take a second, but it should work. It should get started pretty decently. Now, bit of a heads up, it's going to get weird at first. In fact, I'm going to just finish the skin on this. Now bear in mind, I've already did the skinning process on the rest of the body, so technically this is the last thing as said in your instructions. So, yep, everything looks good. So if I go to the actual skin itself, yeah, so this is where it gets a little bit weird because my skin is actually, again, only at half influence. Doesn't seem like it'd be that bad, but check this out. You try and rotate this head, it gets a little weird. You'll notice that your eyes go faster than the actual head, and obviously that is not how actual anatomy works, so yeah, we need to fix that. So the good news is, for a majority of it, it's actually pretty simple. We just need to identify where the actual bending point is for the skull, which is right over here. I'm actually going to take the time to go to replace, go to 0.5, and just add the geometry that's necessary. Oop. Remember, what you do for one side basically works for two. And once you identified those areas, you're going to use the value again at 0.9999. That's the utmost value you can do. And you're going to make your brush bigger. And then you're just going to go to town. Because we definitely do not want the skull joint to get weird. And if you go a little bit further out, you can, that's fine. When you get to the finer details, you might want to turn down the brush. It looks like I got it. Oop, that is an undo. And that looks like it's going to work okay. And again, if it starts to get a little bit too harsh, because again, I think this might get that way, you can use the smooth to literally smooth this stuff out a little bit. I'll probably have to go back here to fix that up, but a good chunk of this is now done. And as you can see, the actual neck got in fine, but it looks like the actual spine itself did not, so I might have to fix that up a little bit. Because, again, this area, definitely you don't want that to be affected by the spine, so I am going to be fixing that a little bit. Okay, so neck. Going to be going into the replace. The value over here looks good. And again, you just don't want certain areas to be bending weirdly. And this value over here, I'm actually going to put that at 0.9. And the spine, yeah, mostly looks pretty good, but I think we could still do a little bit better. Let's see. .9999. And if necessary, every so often, wouldn't be a bad idea to just check your geometry. And yeah, I definitely don't want this to bend a halfway point anywhere here. So I think a full value should be fine. And so that looks like it should do it. Okay. Oop. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to, once again, take the skin on the other side by going to Skin, Mirror Skin Weights, make sure it's YZ. Closest joint should be fine. You mirror that, and hopefully that should do the job pretty well. Down there, looks like I actually have to change that to 0.0001. That's the lowest value you can have safely. Again, if there's any shenanigans going on, you can still fix it. And if it looks good, then by all means, give it a try. Now, it looks like there's some shenanigans still going on. That's not unusual. It's mostly inside the mouth. So, yep, you just go, make sure you have the right thing selected, obviously. Ah, joy. So, let's see here. Yes. And I'm going to put that to a value of 0.9999 because that's as high as I wish this to be. But if anything else, this should show the importance of double checking everything. Just because you think it might be ready does not necessarily mean that might be so. Oh boy, yep, this is definitely a thing. If necessary, you could even try and go into the isolate select in case you think that something's is out of joint, which in that case there was definitely plenty out of joint in this case. This is one of the reasons why using color for your skinning, again, you can get there by going to gradient, use gradient ramp, this is in your tool settings, is so important because the little details are so difficult to see when it's black and white and grays. But if you actually use the colors, it makes this process so much easier. Don't get me wrong, it's still a bit of a challenge sometimes, but at the very least you can see what you're doing. This is also one of the reasons why keeping that symmetry is so important, so that what you do for one side basically works for both of them. Don't get me wrong, if you wish to, it is possible to actually skin both sides differently. And for people who want to do that, that's fine. But when it's available, I do recommend going with this method. So, but anyways, that looks better. Let's see here. Once again, skin, mirror skin weights. Hopefully the other side should be affected. I don't see any weird shenanigans going on there. All right, let's give this a look. So I'm going to get out of isolate selected so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, that looks mostly good. Okay, just having this go back and forth. Okay, it looks like this area over here probably could stand to have a little bit of a fall off. And again, I'm just going to use the smooth here specifically. That's why this area exists in the first place. Just try not to go too far. Yeah, there we are. Also, when you're doing this, really consider how far your elements go when this is happening. And also, don't forget, while you're in joint mode, go into skin, go to bind pose, your best friend when you're testing stuff. And I'm just going to do one more time doing the mirror skin, but I think that's done for all intents and purposes. Yeah, there we go. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing for the shirt, though the shirt is going to be a little tricky. Because once again, I have to figure out what bones are going to be going with what. So in this case, this shirt is predominantly going to be with the hips. And the spine is going to go up like that. So yeah, basically this area down here, that's going to have a majority of the influence. Yep, it's already set. So I'm going to set that up right now. And if necessary, use the view selected on occasion. So you can actually see how the skinning is working. Now again, in these kind of more empty spots, like basically what I'm just doing over here, usually having a high influence or total influence is going to be a better way to go. Emphasis on most of the time. So let's see, 0.5. So I'm just going to, yeah, there we go. So there's the halfway point over here. I think I'm going to just put this at a 0.9 value, not 0.999 value, mind you, just a bit of a higher amount. Yep, there we are. That should make that work a little bit nicer. Now, I'm not worried too much about having total influence in a lot of these areas, mostly because when it comes to the spine, first of all, it's not going to bend completely, unlike some other areas where the joints are a little bit more harder, like, for example, leg bones and arm bones. So having a little bit of leeway is not a bad thing. With the spine, I definitely want to make sure the chest is mostly consistent. Yeah, that should help. But most of this other stuff looks pretty good. I might have to adjust elements on the shoulder, though. In fact, change that from most likely to probably gonna have to. Again, when in doubt, follow the topology. Okay, so that looks better. Let's see how this is actually working out right now, because it could actually work out pretty decently, but you never know until you try it. So going to, oh, I have to actually see what I'm doing. So putting this back to view selected, and going to mirror my skin weights. All the settings are good. Okay. So I'm going to turn on my rig system for a second, because this is going to be a little bit more accurate to how this is going to move. So I think that would be a wiser choice. Okay. So if I'm just bending the spine forward, looks like it does a pretty good job overall. Looks like this area could use a little bit of modification, but otherwise not bad. That part looks pretty good. And again, for what it's worth, also consider that you're only going to be bending forward as far as the actual body can bend forward. So yeah, you're not going to bend too far down. In fact, this is way too much. Because how that part of the body works is if you wanted to bend over, you'd probably rotate the hips a little bit more, like so. Then you would bring the spine afterwards to bring this down a little bit more. Potentially, you might even bring this section a little bit. But you definitely would not be going just from the top just to go forward like this, as the human body does not work that way. Just a little bit of the job should do. And something like this probably is overkill as it is. Got a little nervous there for a second because undo was not working, and that would not have been good. So go with my none rig. Gonna take a look at my stuff again. All right, so it looks like there was some shenanigans going on over here. And I'm just adding influences when necessary. There's the 0.5 value. Oh, sorry, that's the middle of the joint, so that's, again, what gets the 0.5 value. This area might have a little bit more influence than it should, so I think I'm going to actually change that value to a 0.0001, because I think that's what was causing the shenanigans earlier. Yeah, there we go. And a 0.1 value over here. And a 0.0001 value here. Okay, that looks better. And of course, don't forget to mirror. That looks better there. Okay. You don't have to go back to the control rig every time. But it can help see certain elements a little easier. Yeah, this is going a little bit too far, but you can still see that there's some weirdness going on over here. So it might just be a good idea for me to use the smooth option. Or alternatively, well, I'm going to use the smooth option regardless, but what I could do here is, in this area, I can rotate this a little bit more forward. Actually, select those three areas at the same time, move this a little bit more forward. Yeah, there we go. Now that's what I'm looking for. Now when I do the smooth, if it's necessary, I get to see a little bit more what's going on. Ah, there's the problem. That should work. Again, you can go to Skin and go to Bind Pose. And this is the thing you got to kind of watch out for every so often, because things can get weird. So if it ends up that this might be a little bit of an odd moment, let's see. Thank goodness. So I'm going to undo some of the stuff I've done, and hopefully I can get back. Whew, thank goodness. But yeah, when you're going to be rotating forward and that kind of thing, yeah, just be a little careful. Okay, cool. Let's see here. Spine 1. I think this could use a little bit of a smooth on it. Yep, there we go. You got to be a little careful with the whole smoothing process, though. Sometimes it tends to get a little bit strange. So, yeah, there we go. Are. Left shoulder. Cool. Okay. And skin. Let's see here. Mirror skin weight. Okay, just going to make sure my control rig still works properly. Yep, it does. So yeah, this is going to be one of those times because again, I got that weird little glitch. I'm going to save this as a new file just to be safe. Yeah. If there's any time where you think that there's some shenanigans going on, just take a moment and save as a new file. Promise you that it'll save you more often than you probably want to admit. Okay, so looks like there's still some stuff that could be fixed over here. Yeah, definitely this area looks like it could use a little bit of shoulder influence. So I'm definitely going to take a moment to do that. And this area should probably be more focused here. So I'll take a moment to fix that up a little bit. I do want to show a little bit more on the arms. First, I'll fix up some of these other details along the way. But at the very least, it looks like a good chunk of this is working out pretty nicely. So I'm going to turn off the rig. And going to work with the arms at this time. And the halfway point looks pretty good. But yeah, this area, I definitely want to make sure that anything past a certain point doesn't have an influence from this arm. It is going to cause problems. So just temporarily, I'm going to turn on this area. Yeah, that has this arm has way too much influence over here. So I'm going to go to my shoulder. And I'm going to add quite a bit of influence. So that's going to be put as a value of 0.9999. Wouldn't be a bad idea for me to shrink my... Make sure you hold B before trying to change that size. There we go. And the area beyond that should be at a 0.9. Now, hopefully that weird little glitch that happened was a good teaching moment. If you see there's weird shenanigans going on and whatnot, try to undo as quickly as possible. And hopefully get to a spot that's a little bit more familiar. If that doesn't work, it's always a good idea to have extra files around just in case. Okay, so that looks better off. And I think I'm going to want to see my bones again so I can see basically what's going on. There we are. So I'm actually kind of curious to see how well this bends, because it actually could bend okay. Yeah, that ain't bad. I think these areas could use a little bit more influence, but I want to be careful with how much I put in. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to add in, this area over here needs to be put to 0.999. Actually, technically it's 0.999. Yeah, there we go. And what I'm going to do over here is I'm just going to add the values that are necessary. Oh, this is why you want to avoid having total influence, by the way, as it will cause trouble. And sometimes, again, when it comes to influences, sometimes it's basically trial and error. One other thing that you could do to add in influences, you could put in the value for add. I would keep it low, like 0.1 or even 0.5. But this will allow you to add influence little by little. It's great if you want to try and experiment a little bit. It's also one of the reasons why bind pose is such an important feature. So this area over here probably needs a value of 0.9999. Make sure that's a replace, not an add. Yeah, there we go. Again, an area that's not going to bend. Make sure the value is nice. All right, so that looks like it should work out just fine. Careful not to go too far, though. And every so often, try to make sure that you could still get to your bind pose. Okay, thank goodness. No problems there. So we know this part of the arm is better. This area we're going to find out in a moment. For rotations, again, it's not a bad idea to put it to object. Oh yeah, that definitely needs a little bit of fine-tuning. So the halfway point's not bad, but this area, yikes. Technical term for it. Nah, just kidding, obviously. So let's see. Putting that at 0.9. There we are. And the forearm, same thing. Just going to put a 0.9 value. In this area, I'm going to put a total value, or 0.9999. But again, do some tests and find out which value works best for you. That should work out okay. And for the wrist, I believe it would go to here. If you ever have one of those little symbols kind of come on, wouldn't be a bad idea to test to make sure your bind pose is working okay. Looks like it is, thank goodness. Okay. That wrist was pretty much well there, so that's good. So those parts, you know, they're not that bad to fix up. The area where the real test is going to be is the hand, because this is going to take some time to fix. Okay, just making sure that the rotation is working okay. There we are. So yeah, it looks like there could be a little bit of leeway here, but again, smooth should work out pretty well for here. Anytime someplace looks a little bit too harsh, try the smooth. Might end up surprising you every so often. I think this area could use a little bit of influence. Wrist was looking pretty good. This area looks like it could use some improvement. So I think if I go to my left hand, use the add at a very, very low amount, I'm talking 0.05, not even 0.1, and just add more influences little by little. Eventually I will have to add a smooth, or the little smooth option I have over here. But already I can see some pretty vast improvement, which is pretty awesome. Oops, wrong side there. And just add a bit of smooth. Yeah, there we are. As I stated before, it is going to require quite a bit of patience to do some of the elements for skinning. If you keep at it, you should be able to get some decent results. Okay, but that's looking good. Okay, so once again, I'm going to skin, go to bind pose, make sure that my mesh is selected this time. Not gonna lie, that last time I almost had a bit of a heart attack there, but looks like it's working just fine now. So my main bone's over here for the first joint. This is the second joint over here. I think I'm going to want to add at least a little bit of influence in these sections. Again, you got to remember that when everything's said and done, this joint needs to be able to go upwards at least a little bit and not look completely misshapen or disformed. And that's not too bad. Let's see how this looks. Okay, so I think that this area can be smoothed a little bit. Yeah, there we are. That's looking not too bad. All right, let's see here. That's actually pretty close, so. But again, a little smooth here and there probably wouldn't hurt. Yeah, this area definitely need to fix. But that shouldn't be too bad. Again, just going to repeat and 0.9999. This is mostly going toward here. And just fixing this up. Yeah, the fingers tend to be one of the more challenging parts. So let's see. And if you ever get to a point like like the area that I'm in, where you just can't see what you're doing, sometimes it's better to just go to an area that it's easier to see, well, what you're doing. There it is. But again, anytime you see someplace that that's gonna bend, try to make sure that it has a value of 0.5 at least. And if the bending doesn't look right, you can always try to smooth things out to fix things. Yeah, there we go. I think it's working a lot better now. But yeah, you definitely don't want it to just all of a sudden go dark. Having a little bit of leeway helps in cases like this. And let's see, the first thumb. Now this is where things get a little bit nuts. I'm actually kind of curious to see what will happen if I just bring this up by itself. Yeah, definitely need a little bit of work here and there. Yeah, this area over here, though, definitely don't need that, so I'm going to change the value to 0.0001 and just go to town, because I definitely don't need this to move because of that. The skinning usually does a pretty good job overall figuring out which bones should be where. The only areas that tend to get a little bit funky, as you're seeing right now, is if there's a section where there's multiple joints that potentially could be together. In this case, well, you're seeing that right now. So so that's the left hand. Okay. So like I said, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to bind pose. Be careful when you're doing this, by the way, because a very dangerous button, unbind skin, is also very close to the go to bind pose option. And that could cause some real havoc if you're not careful. But I think everyone here gets the general idea of what to do next. Basically, again, just find the certain areas over here and just try to make sure that the appropriate influence is going to the appropriate area. So, for example, if a bone should have more than just halfway influence, or in this case, total influence, you really should try and change that up the best that you can. Then once you're done for one side, you can go to the other side. Now, this is going to take a while, so considering this video is going a bit long, I've shown pretty much everything that I really wanted to show here. And I'm just going to put when you're done, don't forget to turn on your control rig again, because that could cause some problems. But make sure you're in the bind pose and everything else like that. But pretty much when everything is complete, not only will you have your character ready, and hopefully skinned and all that other fun stuff, but they'll be fully controllable using the human IK. And again, I still have a little bit of work to do, but most of this is complete. And of course, with facial expressions using the blend shapes. So animation editors, shape editor, and there's quite a respectable amount of blend shapes over here, just to make sure that the bridge is turned on for the appropriate areas. But that's pretty much it. That's all I really want to show. So just try your best to get this skinned and rigged by next week. If you need some examples, I'll probably leave this finished version on for next week. And if you have any questions or you want me to take a look at something, please message me ASAP. The skinning process, as you can see, does take time, so definitely make sure you allocate appropriate amount of time for this. That's pretty much everything I wanted to go over right now. So without anything else, take care, and I will talk to you guys on the next one.